Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something cold, harsh, and unrelentingly raw, life in Viking Age Scandinavia. Not as a jarl or a shield maiden, no longhouse feasts, no rune-covered swords. Tonight you're not Ragnar Lothbrok, you're just you, dropped unarmed into a world of frostbite, firewood, and the constant smell of dried fish. Before we get going, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if my content helps you unwind. Let me know in the comments where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim your hearth fire and let's tread softly into the frostbitten mist of the past together. You open your eyes to the sound of wind, creaking timber, and someone spitting into the fire. Welcome. You've just woken up inside a Viking longhouse in the year 876, a communal hall packed with bodies, fleas, and suspiciously stained furs. It's dark, it's smoky, and it smells like every animal in the north had a party and forgot to clean up. You're sleeping on a straw-filled sack laid against the wall, sharing the space with your entire family and several goats. Privacy? That's for the gods. Your corner of the longhouse is small, barely enough room to stretch out. The timber walls leak cold and groan in the night wind. The smoke hole in the roof only sometimes works, which means your lungs are earning a thick layer of soot with every breath. Your blanket is made of wool, itchy and damp from yesterday's snow that never really dried. You've got no pillow, no bed frame, and definitely no fire to yourself. Cooking is done in the central hearth, communal and sacred. But if you get too close, someone might accidentally elbow you out of the way. Your worldly possessions, a carved wooden bowl, a patched-up tunic, and a knife that's more rust than metal. No bathroom here, not in the longhouse, and not in the village, just a frozen bucket in the corner, and a trail of yellow snow leading out the back. If you want to relieve yourself, bundle up and trudge out into the biting wind, with your dignity clenched tighter than your jaw. Even the livestock pens smell better than you do, and they look at you like you're the one bringing down the property value. The air inside is thick. Smoke, sweat, and salted fish. Someone's already stirring porridge at the fire, but unless you're favored by the gods or the cook, your share is little more than grey sludge. Outside, you hear the blacksmith hammering, children arguing in Old Norse, and someone vomiting up last night's mead. You haven't even stepped outside, and you're already frozen, filthy, and dreading the long walk to the fjord to fetch water. That'll probably slosh out of your bucket before you make it back. Welcome to the Viking day. You're not a raider, you're not a saga hero. You're just another poor soul, huddled beneath sagging thatch, trying not to lose fingers to frostbite, or step in something steaming before breakfast. And you've still got 23 hours to go. Now that you've survived the longhouse shuffle, and not tripped over a goat, it's time to confront your second most pressing issue, your bladder. There's no privy, no outhouse, no runestones politely pointing to a designated spot. Just the great outdoors, and whatever shame you're willing to cast aside, as you squat in the snow, pants around your ankles, praying the wind doesn't turn cruel. You trudge out, your boots crunching on ice, your breath fogging thick as stew. You find a spot behind a boulder or tree stump. If you're lucky, most aren't. You go quickly, before the cold stabs your skin, or someone comes by and strikes up a conversation about fishing yields. There is no privacy, no walls, no dignity, just open sky dash, and the awareness that ravens are probably watching. If you thought the Roman latrina sounded bad, try dropping your trousers in a snowdrift, and hoping the frost doesn't bite more than your pride. And then there's cleanup. Forget sponges. Forget moss. You're hoping snow does the trick. Or maybe a handful of straw if someone left the barn open. It's cold. It's humiliating. And it's not even the worst part of the morning. If you tried to go behind the chieftain's barn again, you might find yourself cleaning it up with your tongue next time. Social customs in the village are strict. And shame travels faster than sound. Once you're done, you don't wash your hands. You rub them on your tunic and hope the fire is still hot enough to kill whatever you picked up along the way. Soap exists, but it's mostly reserved for cleaning wool. Not you. You re-enter the longhouse, colder, stiffer, and slightly more dead inside. But hey, that's Scandinavia. Now it's time for breakfast, if you want to call it that. So, you've done your morning business, and somehow avoided frostbite, public scorn, or being bitten by a chicken. Impressive. Now it's breakfast time, the most important meal of the day. Unless you're Viking, in which case it's more of a necessary evil, before chopping wood and hauling fish. Say hello to the Norseman's morning delight, barley porridge, and maybe a scrap of dried herring. No coffee, no tea, no sweet rolls or smoked bacon, just lumpy mush that tastes like disappointment. And a side of yesterday's cold broth. The porridge might be slightly fermented if it sat too long. And the herring? It's saltier than your grandmother's funeral dirge. You eat it sitting on a log, surrounded by others doing the same, all silently regretting every decision that led them here. If you're lucky, there's goat milk to wash it down. If you're blessed, honey. But more likely, you choose swallow and try not to cry into your bowl. Sometimes a trader passes by, with hot flatbread or dried berries. And for 1 second, you feel a flicker of hope. But then you remember. You've got 3 coppers to your name, and one is bent, so you gnaw your porridge, and pretend it's roasted duck. And this is how the day begins, with gruel, a fishy aftertaste, and the growing awareness that you'll be hauling ice, chopping trees, and dodging axes until nightfall, all while wearing shoes made of stitched-up regret. You're under the gaze of gods, dozens of them, and not one is known for mercy. After enduring frozen mornings, hauling buckets of slush, and wrestling with livestock that hate you, you might hope for spiritual comfort, some peace, a little moment of reflection. Nope, not in Viking Scandinavia. Religion here isn't a soft-spoken sermon or a warm pew. It's bone-deep, blood-bound, and chanted in the wind. It's not a belief system, it's the weather. You don't pick your gods, they pick you. And there are a lot of them. There's Odin, the All-Father, who gave up an eye for wisdom and expects you to sacrifice more. Thor, the Thunderer, who solves most problems with a hammer. Freya, goddess of love, war, and cats. Frey, her brother, patron of fertility and awkwardly shaped idols. You might think that's the pantheon, but no, there are land spirits in every hill. Wights under your doorstep, elves in the woods, ghosts in the fog. And if you don't leave the proper offering, bread, blood, or mead, don't expect peace. Expect broken tools, spoiled milk, and nightmares that feel like warnings. You can't walk to the privy without passing a rock someone swears is sacred. You bow, you spit, you whisper an apology, just in case. Festivals fill the year like snowdrifts, lesser blot, greater blot, Yule, midsummer rites, and the occasional spontaneous goat sacrifice. You attend all of them. Not out of joy, out of fear, because if the gods aren't honored properly, they retaliate with storms, failed crops, or a sick cow, which, in this world, is economic collapse. You don't understand every ritual. You don't have to. You just have to show up, chant loud, drink hard, and nod along while the Godi, the local priest, throws horseblood at the walls. If you're lucky, you walk away drunk and slightly blessed. If you're not, someone starts speaking in tongues and it turns into a prophecy. And in Viking society, prophecies are social landmines. Now let's talk about power. Because in this world, social standing isn't just about land. It's about honor. And that's the most breakable thing you own. Viking society is a ladder carved out of frozen bone and splinters. At the top, jarls, landowners, chiefs, war leaders with gold arm rings and entire halls named after their fathers. Below them, carls, freemen, farmers, hunters, shipbuilders, traders, people like you, if you're lucky. And beneath that, thralls, slaves, war captives, people bought, sold, or born into it. You don't want to be a thrall. You've seen a thrall. They do everything. They sleep by the fire pit and eat last. If they disobey, they're beaten. If they escape, they're branded. And if they die, they're buried without ceremony, unless someone's feeling nostalgic. Want to move up? Get rich? Get lucky? Or get famous? Fame is currency here. Kill a bear with your bare hands. People remember. Tell a saga so powerful it makes men cry into their ale. You might get a better seat at the feast. But step out of line, steal, lie, dishonor your kin, and your name gets passed around like a curse. Shame sticks. Even your grandchildren will feel it. And then there's the thing. No, not the thing in the woods. The thing is the local assembly. It's where disputes are settled and alliances are forged. It's held in a clearing or on a sacred hill or anywhere someone can bang a spear on a rock and call for order. You attend, because if you don't, you might be declared Nidinga, a dishonorable outcast. There's no judge, no lawyer, just reputation, yelling, and enough tension to snap a longship mast. The chieftain gives verdicts, the Godi blesses the outcome, and everyone nods, even if no one understands what just happened. Justice here is loud, public, and occasionally solved with axes. Your clothes reflect your place. Rough wool, hand-dyed if you're fortunate, always covered in soot. Your speech matters, your posture matters, your ability to hold your mead without vomiting. Crucial. And if you mess up, if you insult the wrong person, or say the wrong prayer at the wrong shrine, you don't get a warning. You get fined, or challenged, or called a coward in front of your entire clan. Reputation is law. An exile is always on the table, so you walk the line. You help raise the longhouse roof. You lend tools without asking for thanks. You laugh at the Jarl's joke, even if it wasn't funny. Because in Viking Scandinavia, surviving isn't just about strength. It's about knowing when to kneel and when to roar. You don't visit a seer on a whim. You visit when the air goes wrong, when animals refuse to look you in the eye, when your child starts humming a tune no one taught them, when the dreams stop being dreams and start becoming instructions. Then, and only then, do you walk the path. Not the main road, not a friendly footpath. A narrow one, half-game trail, half memory, cut between the trees, marked by bones, feathers, and things best left unnamed. She lives beyond the village, always, never too close, never too far, because a seeress must see without being seen. She belongs to the people, but not among them. The hut appears like it grew there. Low roof, smoke curling, walls stitched with runes and driftwood. You pause at the threshold. You don't knock. You wait. Eventually, the flap opens. Eyes meet. Hers are sharp, old, knowing. She doesn't greet you. She already knows why you've come. Inside is neither warm nor cold, just elsewhere. The smell is thick. Herbs, smoke, salted fat, and something metallic that may or may not be blood. It's dark, but not pitch. A glow from coals. A flicker from a tallow lamp. The shadows lean in like they're listening too. She gestures, and you sit. On fur, on straw, or bone. You can't tell. You don't speak yet. No one speaks first to a vulva. She begins with questions. Not about your name. She doesn't care about your name. She asks about your dreams, your ancestors, what the crows have been doing lately, whether you've noticed the wind whistling the same tune each morning. Then, the preparation begins. She grinds herbs in a bowl carved from antler, burns resin in a basin lined with ash. She sings, low and rhythmic, a chant in a tongue older than any saga. You are given something to chew. It numbs the tongue, not poison, but not food either. Your pulse slows, your breath lengthens, time folds in on itself like wet leather. This isn't just fortune-telling, this is travel. She doesn't read runes for entertainment. She casts them like stones into a deep lake and listens to what echoes back. Sometimes she uses bones, bird bones, fox knuckles, a human finger joint, etched with symbols no one else is allowed to recognize, and then she hums again. But this time it isn't a song. It's a key. She lifts her staff, always carved, always sacred, and draws shapes in the air, drawing the world open one gesture at a time. You don't remember falling asleep, but suddenly you're not in the hut anymore. You are walking through a forest where the trees whisper your name. You are seeing a shoreline from above, and the waves are speaking in voices you almost recognize. You are a hawk, then a hare, then nothing at all, and then you are back, blinking, sweating, crying maybe, with her staring at you like she's just watched you be born. The vulva tells you nothing plainly. She speaks in symbols, in contradictions, in warnings disguised as compliments. You don't get answers. You get burdens. The rest is yours to interpret, as prophecy always is. You leave before dawn. You're not sure how long you were there. An hour? A day? 2 seasons? The forest looks different now. Or maybe your eyes do. When you return to the village, you don't talk about it. No one asks. They can tell. The smell of smoke clings to your skin. Your eyes look past people, not at them. You eat less. Sleep light. Start watching ravens a bit too closely. You've changed. Everyone knows. That was the point. Visiting a vulva isn't a trip. It's a transformation. It's asking to see behind the veil. And living with the consequences. Some never recover. They walk into the woods and don't return. Others become silent for life. And a very few, take what they saw, shape it like a blade, and change everything. But you carry on, because prophecy isn't fate. It's a map, and maps don't walk themselves. The village knows this. That's why they only send people when it's necessary. A birth gone wrong, a crop that won't grow, a bad star hanging too long in the sky. The seeress is a last resort, because she never gives comfort. She gives truth, and truth in the Viking world is never soft. Even children are told of her. Not to scare them, but to prepare them, because one day they might be the ones sent through the trees. With a question too heavy for the gods to ignore, she doesn't live forever. No one does. But when a vulva dies, the entire village mourns like a limb has been severed. She is buried with her staff, her bones painted in ochre, her face covered in cloth to keep her visions from leaking into the soil. They say the earth hums louder where a seeress sleeps. That mushrooms grow faster there, that lightning strikes nearby, even in winter. No one builds on that ground. No one sings there. It belongs to something else now. Still, another will come, always. A girl who sees things in water. A widow who dreams true, someone who wakes up one day and just knows. And when she does, the village will build her a hut, just out of sight, just beyond the trees, and once again the path will form, marked by bones, feathers, and the silence of things waiting to be known. The Vikings were not sealed in ice. They didn't grow in isolation like some frozen myth. They traveled, they saw, they took. And when they came home, they didn't just bring loot, they brought influence. For all their reputation as raiders, the Norse were also collectors. Of stories, of tools, of gods. They were more than warriors. They were cultural thieves in the most brilliant sense. Stealing what worked, reworking what didn't, and forgetting the difference by the time the snow fell again. You don't sail as far as they did without being changed. From the British Isles to Byzantium, from the edges of Arabia to the rivers of Russia, the Vikings weren't just passing through, they were absorbing. Start with the weapons, the curved blades of the East. They noticed, and while they didn't copy them outright, Viking smiths learned quickly. They experimented with balance, shape, and metal folded like dough. You can find Norse swords with hilts that look suspiciously Frankish, and axes with edges designed not just to kill, but to cut through armor they hadn't seen until Francia. Chainmail wasn't invented in Scandinavia, but it became a status symbol back home, a stitched puzzle of foreign engineering and local pride. Even the famous longship wasn't birthed in a vacuum. Yes, the Norse perfected it. Long, sleek, flexible as a snake with sails that caught the wind like a whispered prayer. But elements of its design, flat bottoms, shallow drafts. Echo boats used on the rivers of Eastern Europe, where Vikings mingled with Slavs and Balts, and learned how to sail not just across oceans, but through forests. And then there's trade. For all the talk of axes and fire, the Vikings were merchants just as often. They didn't just raid monasteries, they sold what they stole. Silks from the East, glassware from the Mediterranean, coins with Arabic script found buried beneath northern soil. Not looted, but used, circulated, exchanged, becoming part of everyday life. A Viking might spend the morning sacrificing a goat to Thor, and the afternoon haggling over Chinese spices, with a man who'd never seen snow. Even the gods had guests. Thor and Odin reigned, yes. But look closer at Norse myth, and you find shadows of older pantheons, storm gods, fertility spirits, tricksters. Every culture has them. The names change, the symbols shift, but the bones are familiar. Some scholars believe the Norse concept of Ragnarök, the end of all things, may have roots in Indo-European fire myths, blended with Slavic or Celtic end-time stories picked up along the way. Even Valhalla, that great hall of the dead, might echo warrior afterlives spoken of in Persian and Germanic circles, not copied, not stolen, but stirred together until only the flavor remained. They didn't write sagas while sailing, but they told stories, and stories are sponges. You soak up the accents of the places you pass, some of the great Norse tales of dragons, cursed rings, and shapeshifters bear eerie resemblance to myths from the Rhineland, from ancient Gaul, from Saxon Britain. The sagas didn't come from nowhere. They came from everywhere a ship could touch. Even religion, hard, blood-bound Norse paganism, was not immune. As Christianity spread like fog through Europe, it didn't crash into Norse belief all at once. It seeped, first into trade, then into politics, then, finally, into hearts. Runestones appear with crosses, old gods carved next to new ones, burial mounds giving way to wooden churches, built with the same tools by the same hands. Some resisted, some converted, most did both at once. For a generation or two, you might offer a prayer to Christ, and a bloodied oatcake to Freya, just to be sure. Architecture, too, caught foreign winds. The stave church, so iconic to Scandinavia, wears the bones of old longhouses and the skin of Christian basilicas, a hybrid, like so much of Norse life, crafted not from purity, but from practicality. If it kept the wind out and the gods in, they built it. Clothing changed. Dyes and fabrics from abroad made their way home, Arabic patterns on Norse belts, Eastern silks in the cloaks of Jarls, a warrior wearing a Byzantine buckle and calling it traditional. And language, a living, shifting thing. Norse tongues picked up bits and pieces wherever they went. Place names in Ireland, in Normandy, in Iceland, linguistic driftwood left after the tide went out. In the east, Norse mixed with Slavic. In the west, it danced with Old English. You can still hear echoes of it. In borrowed words, in place names, in the stubborn survival of names like Eric, Bjorn, or Sven. Across continents they never dreamed of. Even in death, the influence lingered. By the end of the Viking Age, burials changed. Gone were the ships and grave goods. In their place, crosses, rosaries, quiet stone markers instead of mounds. But now and then, a sword tucked beneath the floorboards of a Christian chapel, a carved hammer hidden beneath a crucifix. Not resistance, not surrender, but memory. Because that's what Vikings were best at. Memory. They didn't invent everything. They didn't need to. They remembered. They remixed. They reforged the world into something useful, something fearsome, something theirs. And so the Norse legacy isn't a frozen one. It's not trapped in a fjord or buried beneath snow. It's in the blend. The boldness to steal with purpose, to travel without losing yourself, but also without refusing to change. They were not untouched. They were transformed, and they transformed others in return. Because sometimes the greatest strength is not resisting influence, but knowing what to do with it, once it's in your hands. You don't believe in the gods. You know them. You felt them in the wind, heard them in the crack of thunder, seen them in the way fire leaps, or how a raven stares too long without blinking. They are not distant, not symbolic. They are present, demanding, and sometimes merciful, but never soft. The gods are many, but some walk closer beside you than others. Odin comes first, not because he is kind, but because he is always watching. He is the All-Father, Lord of war, wisdom, poetry, and death. A god of paradoxes. He gave his eye for knowledge. Hung from the world tree for 9 nights, wounded and alone, to drink from the well of secrets. Now he knows too much. Now he sees what others cannot. You call to Odin not for comfort, but for clarity, before a battle, before a hard choice, before you cast the runes and don't like what they say. He wears a cloak, carries a spear named Gungnir that never misses. He rides an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, born of strange magic and stranger sins. He is followed by ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. They fly over the world and whisper all they see. You leave offerings for Odin at the gallows tree. You speak his name with respect, but never too loud. Because Odin does not just bless, he takes. Thor is different. He's the one you pray to when the storm rolls in, and the roof starts to groan. He is the thunderer, son of Odin, though they're nothing alike. Thor is strength, protection, loyalty, and rage. You've carved his hammer Mjolnir into your amulet, not for luck, for survival. Thor rides a chariot pulled by two goats, Tangrisnir and Tangjosta, and when he throws his hammer, it always comes back, with lightning. He protects Midgard, the world of men, from giants and monsters that want to chew it to pieces. You call to Thor during childbirth, during storms, when you're swinging an axe and hoping the blade lands true. He doesn't ask for sacrifice, just strength and mead. Thor likes mead. Freya watches too, but she doesn't roar like Thor. She waits. She is beauty and blood, lust and loss, goddess of love, yes, but also death. Half the battle slain go to Odin's hall. The other half go to Freya's. Her hall is Folkvangr, a field for warriors who died with dignity, but without ambition. She rides a chariot drawn by cats. She wears a cloak of falcon feathers, a necklace of fire called Brisingamen, and when she cries, her tears turn to gold. You don't cross Freya. She doesn't shout. She doesn't need to. She knows what you want and what it will cost. You leave her offerings of amber, honey, and tangled hair. You speak her name in love spells and during grief, because Freya knows what it is to mourn, and she'll sit with you in the dark if you ask. Frey, her twin brother, rules peace, harvest, and fertility. He's not a war god, he's a life god. You honor Frey when you sow grain, when your wife's belly swells, when the apples grow fat in late summer. He is gentler than his kin. But don't mistake that for weakness. He gave up his sword for love once, a decision that will cost him dearly come Ragnarok. He rides a golden boar named Gullinbursti, shining even in the night. His ship, Skidbladnir, always finds wind. His temples are thick with incense and animal blood. Because life, too, demands sacrifice. You call to Frey when your cow is dying, when the frost comes too early, when your daughter is struggling to carry her child. He listens, but only if the offering is good. Frigg is Odin's wife. But she is not a queen who sits quietly. She knows fate, all of it. She sees the future and keeps it to herself. She is the goddess of motherhood, of marriage, of wisdom, held in silence. You whisper to her during childbirth. You braid her name into lullabies. You ask her for patience, not miracles. Her hall is Fensalir, a quiet place, where she weaves clouds and secrets in equal measure. Frigg knows things she does not share, and when your life unravels, you suspect she already saw the first thread snap, but she says nothing. Because Frigg does not warn, she watches. Loki is the question mark in every sentence. A trickster, a shapeshifter, a god born of fire and chaos. He is not evil, he is not good, he is necessary. Loki is the reason the gods get into trouble, and the reason they get out of it. He is the father of monsters, the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Jörmungandr, and Hel, who rules the underworld. You don't pray to Loki, not unless you're desperate, but you keep a wary eye for him, in the gambler's grin, in the liar's charm, in the spark that sets the roof on fire. Loki helps, Loki ruins, sometimes in the same breath. Tyr is the god of law, oaths, and brave decisions. He doesn't shout, he doesn't threaten, he acts. He once placed his hand in Fenrir's mouth to bind the beast and keep the world safe. The wolf bit it off. Tyr did not flinch. You call to Tyr when justice is needed, when a sacrifice must be made, when someone has to stand alone and still do what's right. He is quiet, but he is present. Sometimes that's enough. Heimdall sees everything, literally. He is the watchman of the gods, guardian of Bifrost, the rainbow bridge to Asgard. He hears grass grow, sees footsteps before they're taken. You call to him for vigilance, for warning. You leave offerings at doorways, gates, boundaries, because Heimdall knows when trouble's coming and when the line must be drawn. At Ragnarok, he will blow the Gjalla horn, and the world will hear it end. Hel, Loki's daughter, rules the underworld. Half beautiful, half decayed. She is not evil, she is inevitable. You don't worship Hel, you accept her. She receives those who die of sickness, old age, cowardice. Her realm is not torment, it is stillness. You place your dead in her care and hope they do not return angry. Her name is whispered, not shouted, spoken with respect and fear. There are others. Njord, Frey and Freya's father, god of sea, wealth and wind. You pray to him when the sails fill wrong and the fish vanish. Bragi, the god of poetry, whose tongue was carved with runes, and whose stories keep the gods remembered. Idun, keeper of the golden apples that grant the gods their youth. You call to her when strength wanes and time creeps. Sif, Thor's wife, goddess of grain and gold hair, you honor her during harvest and before winter bites. Skadi, the snowshoe goddess of the hunt and mountains, you invoke her in the wild when tracking deer or surviving alone. Every god has a season, a place, a shadow they cast on your life. They are not perfect, they fight, they fail, they die, but they walk with you, and for that you honor them. You carve their symbols into wood and bone. You wear their names around your neck. You speak to them in silence and scream to them in agony. You give them blood, bread, mead, your first hunt, your last breath. And if they answer, good. If they don't, you sacrifice again. Because in the Viking world, the gods are not gods because they are unreachable. They are gods because they reach back. You don't own much. A blade, a boat if you're lucky, maybe a ring passed from father to son, worn thin at the edge. But you carry one thing heavier than any sword. Your name. That's the weight. Not silver, not land. Reputation. In the north, your name walks into the room before you do. It's the stories they tell when you're not around, the silence when your deeds are mentioned, the way people nod, or don't, when you raise your drinking horn. Your name is your afterlife. It lives longer than your breath. And when the gods sought the dead, they ask not just how you died, but what you meant. Honor isn't a feeling here, it's a law, not written, lived. It's in the way you greet your enemies, in the way you treat your kin, in how you repay an insult, or a kindness. You can be poor and still have honor. You can have one eye, a broken back, a ship held together with pitch and prayer, and still be remembered if you held the line when it cracked. But lose your honor, you don't just fall, you sink. Shame clings. It doesn't shout, it whispers, behind doors, in markets, at the edge of feasts, where the laughter never quite reaches you. Maybe you turned your back in battle. Maybe you lied when you should have fought. Maybe you let a guest go hungry, or worse, your name was mocked and you said nothing. There are rules here, unspoken but sharp. Hospitality, oaths, blood debt, guest right. Break them, and the gods might forgive you. But people won't. You've seen what shame does. The man who won't lift his head at the moot. The woman whose sons won't sit near her. The warrior who fights too hard, too fast. Trying to bury his guilt under someone else's body. Shame is not always loud, but it's always seen, and there's only one cure. Deed. You earn your name back with action, by standing when others kneel, by striking first and bleeding last, or if the insult is deep enough, by dying well, because sometimes the only way to clean your name is with your own blood. Dueling is one way, holmgang, 2 men, 1 insult, 1 patch of ground. It doesn't matter if you win, it matters that you showed up. You remember your first, your hands shook, your mouth tasted of copper, but you stepped onto the circle, and when the axe hit bone and the crowd went quiet, you didn't smile, you breathed. Some feuds don't end with duels. They stretch across seasons, families, generations. You don't start those lightly, but once begun, they own you. You kill one man, and his brother comes, then his cousin, then his sons. The blood never dries. And every moot becomes a game of glances and knives under cloaks. But feuds also build legacy. No one forgets the family who stood their ground. No one forgets the man who died defending his sister's name. You speak of those people with respect, even if you hated them, Because honor doesn't ask if you liked someone, it only asks what they did when it mattered. And yet, honor is not just about vengeance, it's about balance. You give weight to your words, you pay your debts, on time or early, you protect those who eat under your roof. And if someone wrongs you, you don't wait forever, but you wait long enough. Because a man who strikes too soon is reckless, and a man who waits too long is weak. The right moment, that's the art of it. Some say the gods watch, that Odin himself keeps a ledger, that every brave act is carved into a hall of bone and mist, waiting to be read when your soul stands before the gates of Valhalla. You don't know if that's true, but you act like it is. And what of mercy? There's honor in that too. If it's earned. To spare a beaten enemy can show strength. To feed a guest when you are hungry can show greatness. But mercy given too easily becomes its own shame. You've seen what happens when kindness is mistaken for weakness. You've buried friends because of it, so you show mercy rarely. And when you do, you make sure they understand the price. Your name is what you leave behind. When you die, your sword might rust, your boat might rot. But your name, that travels. It's whispered in feasts, sung by skalds, carved into stone or remembered in silence. And if you're lucky, if you're worthy, they'll say this: he kept his word. He faced his end. He was not a perfect man, but he was a man. Healing in the Viking world came not from clean halls or white linen, but from bark, bone, and belief. The forest was your pharmacy. You didn't trust anything that didn't grow, bleed, or sting a little when chewed. Leaves, roots, ash, and sap. If it didn't burn going down, it probably didn't work. You knew which moss drew out rot, which mushrooms cured fever, and which ones made you talk to your dead uncle for 2 days straight. You knew how to pack a wound with honey and cover it with linen soaked in vinegar, and you knew that sometimes nothing helped, not even prayer. You don't go to the healer for a scratch. You go when the breath won't come back, when the skin goes pale and the blood turns strange, when the bone pokes out where it shouldn't and everyone stops meeting your eyes. And when you go, you don't knock. You stand outside her door until she calls you in. Her hut smells like fire and iron and dried flowers. Bones hang from the beams, not for fear, but for memory. They rattle when the wind shifts, soft warnings to spirits and people alike. She asks no questions. She lifts your arm, inspects your ribs, checks behind your eyes. She mutters to herself in a language older than yours. Then she begins to work. There are no surgical tools, only knives, iron tweezers, and hands that have mended more flesh than they've held. She boils water, not because she knows what germs are, but because her mother did, and her mother before that. She mixes herbs into a paste, yarrow for clotting, celandine for infection, angelica root for strength, ash bark for fever, pine resin to seal the wound. She pours something bitter down your throat. Mead mixed with foxglove and willow bark. It burns like fire, but your pain starts to fade, or maybe you just stop caring. She hums while she works, a steady tune, somewhere between a lullaby and a threat. You recognize none of the words, but the sound keeps you tethered to the world while she pulls your body back from the edge of it. Sometimes she sings to the gods, sometimes to the Landvettir, sometimes to the wound itself. Not all healing is cutting and boiling, sometimes it's sitting, by the fire, wrapped in a damp fur, drinking broth from a wooden bowl, while someone watches you long enough to notice if your breath changes. Sometimes it's rest, which you hate, because rest means you're vulnerable, but the healer insists. And no one argues with her, because she's outlived too many of her patients to be questioned. She knows when a wound is not just a wound, when the sickness is not in the flesh, but in the soul. She smokes you with herbs, juniper, sage, mugwort, wafting the smoke around your limbs like a blessing or a warning. She marks your forehead with ash. She whispers names you've never heard. And you sleep. You dream of snow, of wolves standing still in the dark, of your mother's voice in a language you don't speak. When you wake, your fever has broken. Or it hasn't, but the weight inside you is lighter. Nature is not kind, but it is consistent. And that's enough to build medicine from. The land gives what it will. You forage for what you need. In spring, young nettles for tea. In summer, flowers and roots. In winter, bark stripped from trees in desperation and hope. The ocean offers help too. Seaweed poultices for bruises, salt water for cleaning wounds, shark oil if you're lucky enough to have it. Even snow can be healing. To cool the body, to numb pain, to press into a swollen joint and grit your teeth until it works. Sometimes healing is less about potions and more about pressure. You hold someone down while the healer resets the bone. You bite leather to keep from screaming. You bury your face in fur while hot iron sears a wound closed. It's not mercy, it's survival. Mercy is for after. Not everyone lives. Some wounds stink before they even close. Some fevers burn through the body like wildfire. Some spirits just don't come back. The healer knows when to stop, when to put down her herbs, when to place a hand on your chest and start singing a death song instead of a healing one. You don't always notice the change, but somewhere deep, when she switches from saving you to helping you let go. The dead are not discarded, they are prepared, washed in river water, eyes closed with care, coins placed in hand, or a blade across the chest, just in case they need to fight on the other side. Sometimes the healer leads the ritual, sometimes the family does, but always the body is honored, because if you disrespect the dead, they remember. And when you're strong enough to walk again, when your ribs knit and your voice comes back, you return to her. You bring gifts, not payment. She doesn't take silver. You bring herbs, firewood, honey, or something she lost but didn't ask for. Sometimes you bring silence. She accepts that too. You leave with a limp, with a scar, with a new respect for the earth and the woman who pulls you back from it. You don't talk about what you saw while you burned with fever, not to anyone, not even yourself. Some things are meant to stay in the smoke. Healing is not clean. It is not quiet. It is loud, messy, painful, and holy. It's knowing the body well enough to cheat death. For one more winter, it's listening to bones like they're speaking. It's watching for omens in spit, blood, and breath. In the Viking world, healing is not a kindness. It is a skill, a sacrifice. It's a sacred violence done in the name of life. And when it works, when the wound closes, when the fever cools, you don't say thank you. You nod. You walk away. You get back to work. Because living is the only gratitude the healer expects. You don't build a longship. You summon it. It starts in the woods, long before a single nail is driven. Not just any trees. Oak for the keel, pine for the planks, ash for the oars. Each one chosen, each one spoken to. Because ships are not just tools in your world. They're spirits. And spirits require respect. The keel is carved from a single tree, felled in winter when the sap is still and the wood holds its strength. It runs the full length of the ship. The spine, the builders, skipasmida, work in silence at first. Then song, then rhythm. Axes bite like careful teeth. They split, not saw, the planks, grain by grain, curve by curve, every piece shaped to its place. It is called clinker-built, overlapping planks, each fastened with iron rivets or tree nails, each sealed with tar and wool and prayer. The ribs rise from the keel like the cage of a great sea beast, curved, tensed, measured, then the stem and stern, the head and tail, often carved. A serpent, a dragon, a snarling wolf, not decoration. Warning, the ship is fastened with iron, heated in the forge, hammered flat, curled tight. But the real strength comes from what isn't seen, the flex. Long ships bend with the water. They ride the sea like a horse rides wind. They cut across it, not through it. That's what makes them faster. That's what makes them alive. At the center, the mast. Shorter than you'd expect. Not for show, for use. It holds the sail dash, woven from wool, dyed red, striped or plain. Heavy, oiled, dense enough to catch even the breath of the gods. You can row without it, yes, but when the wind fills the sail, the ship flies. There are no cabins, no luxuries, just benches, rowlocks, oars, and silence, because every man on a long ship rows. Every man pulls his weight, even the Jarl if he knows what's good for him. When it's done, When the planks are set, the rivets cooled, the pitch cured, you do not simply push it into the water, you launch it. A feast, a blessing, a name whispered 3 times, once to the gods, once to the sea, once to the dead. A sacrifice is often made, a goat, a sheep, once, long ago, a man, because something must die for the ship to live. And when the keel kisses salt for the first time, you swear the ocean smiles. Longships come in kinds, carvy, small, swift, for trade, for rivers, for 5 to 15 men. Snekia, longer, with 30 oars or more. Narrow, perfect for war. Drakkar, the great dragon ships, serpents with sails. Some stretch over 70 feet, built to terrify as much as to travel. The carvings at the prow are meant to scare spirits as much as enemies. Some were detachable, removed when entering friendly ports, left on when headed for blood. Every longship has a personality, a mood. Some drift like thought. Others pull at the waves like they're hungry. You speak to yours, you curse it, you love it, and it becomes your second skin. You sleep on it, fight on it, bury your kin with it, because in the end, the longship is not a vessel. It's a promise, a vow made to the wind, that you'll go where others fear, and return with stories, or not at all. You don't just ride a longship, you serve it. Every plank you step on has seen blood. Every oar calloused a hand. Every journey etched a name into salt and timber. Longships are not made for rest. They are made for movement. They cut rivers like knives. Slide over open sea with the silence of a ghost. Shallow enough to ride inland. Light enough to carry over land. You've dragged one over tundra. Pushed one through marsh. Lifted it like a wounded beast and coaxed it back to the water. Because a longship isn't just transport. It's a strategy. When you raid, you strike at dawn, or better, before dawn. The ship hugs the fog. The sail comes down, the oars come out, and you move like breath over skin. You've slipped up rivers no map has named, come ashore where no one watches, taken silver from abbeys and kings who never thought the sea would rise against them, all because your ship could move where theirs could not. In war, the longship is a floating fortress. You lash shields to the sides, not just for protection, but to intimidate. The hull becomes a wall of iron-rimmed circles. The dragonhead snarls at the horizon. The sail looms like a red omen. By the time the enemy sees you, they've already lost. In battle, you leap from the prow first, always first, because hesitation is death. The ship grounds in shallow water. You jump, shield, axe, fury. Behind you 30 more. They fan out, form a wall, begin the work, and when the battle's done, you retreat to the ship, quick, clean, with coin, or wounds, or captives, but always faster than the answer that follows. You've slept on your ship, eaten on it, wept on it, watched ice form on the sail at night and melt by morning. You've watched stars move over the mast, watched ravens follow you for days, guides or omens you're never sure. You've seen dolphins arc beside the bow, and dead men sink from it. And always you keep rowing. Trade, too, is written in longships. You've carried furs to Dublin, amber to Frisia, iron to Novgorod, slaves to Miklagard. You've seen gold and silk and spices in places you can't pronounce. And all of it flowed through this curved deck, this pine skeleton, this thing that lets you cross the world without asking its permission. The ship doesn't care what you carry, only that you carry, only that you move. Even peace needs longships, for weddings, for law meets, for oaths of alliance sealed with sails on the horizon. You don't just arrive, you arrive. The ship speaks for you, its size, its shape, its scars. Men know what kind of warrior you are by the shape of your hull. And in death, when it's time, the longship doesn't vanish. Sometimes you bury it. Sometimes you burn it. Sometimes you send it out to sea with fire in its belly, and let it carry your soul where no sail can follow. It is the road to Valhalla, the gate, the offering, because the gods do not ask for flowers. They ask for ships. There is no song in the north that does not mention the sea, and there is no sea without her. The longship, your chariot, your coffin, your church, she does not speak, but she remembers. And you, if you are lucky, will be remembered with her. You are Norwegian. You were born where cliffs meet cloud, where water doesn't just flow, it falls, where farms cling to the earth like secrets and the sun takes its time returning. You don't come from cities, you come from fjords, from harbours carved by ancient ice and stubbornness, from longhouses that creak in the wind and fires that never die all the way down. You weren't raised on plenty, you were raised on effort. Every breath, every step, every harvest wrestled from mountain and sea, and maybe that's why your people are the way they are. Quiet but not weak, proud but not loud, quick to fight, quicker to remember. Because here, survival is belief. And belief, like your sword, gets passed down with a sharp edge. You've heard what the Danes say, that you're too wild, too proud, too scattered to hold anything together. Let them talk. Let them sit in their flat lands and build kingdoms with coins. Let them trade their names for silk and thrones. You'd rather have a mountain. You'd rather have a ship and the wide dark ocean and a story no one else gets to tell. Still, you know them, the Danes. You've raided with them, bled beside them, drunk their mead and eaten their oversalted fish. Their kings are clever, their ships are fast, and their ambition burns like fire under their skin. You fought them too, at sea in the cold spray when names didn't matter, only oars and iron. Over territory, over pride, over insults whispered too close to the fire, but you don't hate them. In truth, you understand them more than you'll ever admit. Because while they claim flat lands and easy wheat, you know how deep their roots run. Their jarls hold grudges like family heirlooms. Their warriors fight with smiles that don't reach their eyes. And when a Danish fleet comes into view, you don't run, you watch, because every Danish sail carries trade. Or war, sometimes both, and you're ready for either. You've traded daughters, pledged brothers, sworn peace in one breath and broken it in the next. That's the rhythm of the North. You and Denmark are cousins, not by blood, but by weather. Then there's Finland. You don't speak their tongue, not truly. It rolls strange, sharp-edged, full of wind and the feeling of things you can't see. They are forest people, deep people. You don't raid them like you do the South. You don't barter with them like the East. You approach the Finns the way you approach a wolf in the snow, carefully, respectfully, without blinking, because they know things, old things. They don't build like you. They don't worship like you. Their gods aren't gods. They're forces, forest, wind, stone, the crack between lightning and earth, and their wise women don't ask permission. They see. You've seen it yourself. A seer in reindeer skins, whispering to bone, telling you what your own ancestors won't. You've traded with the Finns. Iron for furs, beads for meat, stories for silence. Sometimes you think they know more about you than you know about them. Sometimes you think that's fair. When winter turns the roads to ice and the fjords freeze into glass, you remember what your father said, if you go east, bring a blade. If you go south, bring an oath. If you go to Finland, bring an offering. He wasn't wrong. Back home, your town clings to the water like a ship still docked. The boats are pulled up for repair, the nets are drying. The children chase gulls across frost-hardened ground. Above, the mountains, always the mountains. They don't speak, but they watch. And so do you, because you know the North doesn't forget. Not the land, not the gods, not you. Your people are scattered, yes, but not broken. You've seen the coast light up with beacons, seen 100 ships rise from the mist like teeth. When it matters, Norway moves as one. Not because a king commands it, but because honor demands it. You remember Harold Fairhair, the first to try to gather Norway like fire in his hands. You didn't love him, but you respected him. He beat the Jarls at their own game, cut down rebellion with gold and steel, unified the coastlines under one crown. It didn't last forever. Nothing does. But it proved the point. Norway can be won, when needed. The Danes build empires. The Swedes build armies. But you build legends, names passed in firelight, battles sung into stone, bloodline etched into the bones of the land. You don't need to conquer everything, just to be remembered. When your ship sails south, they sing your name. When they land in Ireland, the monks whisper it. When they see your wolf banner rise, they pray to their new god with old fear. Because Norway doesn't send armies, it sends storms, swift, sudden, unforgiving, and then gone. But back home, you're not just a raider, you're a builder, a farmer, a father. You fish in the morning, you cut wood in the evening, you drink by the hearth and argue about politics you pretend not to care about. You mend sails, you tell sagas, you bury your dead with the honor they earned. And when your sons ask you where they come from, you point to the sea, and then to the mountain, because Norway isn't a place, it's a promise that if the gods give you wind, and your hands give you work, and your heart gives you courage, then no storm can break you. You don't hate the Danes, you don't fear the Finns, you just remember who you are. And in the cold, when your breath smokes, and your boots crunch over last season's bones, you smile, because you're still here. You've seen warriors, you've fought beside them, bled beside them, buried some, feared others, but not all warriors are the same. There are those who fight for land, those who fight for gold, and those who fight because fighting is the only thing that makes sense in a world shaped by gods who love chaos. In the Viking world, warrior is not a title, it's a function, a choice, a sentence. Hersir. You've likely served under one. A Hersir is a local leader, a landholder, a warrior chieftain. Not quite a king, not just a farmer. He owns land and men, and when the time comes, he raises both. The Hersir leads raids, he settles disputes, he carries the weight of law, axe, and oath all at once. He wears chainmail, if he can afford it. And his sword has a name. You respect him. But you also watch him. Because power makes men strange. Drengr, a word older than steel. A Drengr is a fighter by reputation, not by birth. Loyal, honorable, the kind who helps lift the boat before asking for coin. He might not lead, he might not own land. But when things go wrong, you look for him. He fights with discipline, he stands his ground, and he dies well. That's the part everyone remembers. Carl warriors. Most likely this is you. Not noble, not king's guard, just willing. You own your weapons, you answer the call. You fight when the Jarl calls for ships, or when silver smells clothes. You are the meat of the army, the blade in the gut, the man who doesn't make it into the saga, but whose hand held the line long enough for someone else to. You train with axe, spear, or bow. Whatever you can carry, whatever gets the job done. Your armor is a patchwork, leather, boiled hide, a stolen mail shirt, maybe a helmet if your brother didn't need it more. You survive with skill, luck, or the blood of someone standing beside you. Herdmen. These are the Jarl's chosen. They eat better, train harder, live in the longhouse, close to the seat of power. Their loyalty is bought with food, gear, and the promise of land after death, or at least a good spot in the saga. They form the Jarl's shield wall, the iron spine of any real army. Herdmen drill in formation. They know signals, ranks, tactics. Not wild, not frothing, just dangerous. You've seen them break a Saxon line like it was kindling. You'd like to be one dash, or maybe you were, once before things fell apart. Archers, unloved, until you need them. They wear lighter gear, carry knives, short swords, hunting bows. They strike from distance, above, behind, through trees. You don't see them, you just feel it when your shield jerks with the force of something feathered and fast. In some armies, they're second class. In others, they're ghosts. Some use fire, some use poison, all of them use silence. You don't drink with archers, but you thank them if you live. Ulfhednar. Now the blood runs colder. The Ulfhednar are wolf-coated berserkers, men who don't fight like men. They don't wear mail. They wear animal skins, painted with blood and madness. They believe the spirit of the wolf enters them. You don't doubt it, and they don't hold formation. They break them, charging ahead, foaming at the mouth, striking fear into men who thought they were brave. Some say they feel no pain. Some say they don't live long. You've seen both. You don't stand in their way. You just wait for the screams to stop. Berserker. The name chills even your bones. Cousin to the Ulfhednar, but worse. They wear bearskins, sometimes nothing at all. They chant. They bite their shields. They roar like gods come unhinged. They fight in trances, eyes rolled back, bodies twitching with something deeper than rage. They claim Odin rides with them. You don't argue. You've seen one take 4 spears to the gut and keep walking. You've seen another collapse after the battle, weeping like a child with no memory of what he did. Berserker are weapons, uncontrolled, unpredictable, and utterly effective, until they turn on you. Skirmishers, fast, light, smart. They don't wait for the shield wall. They move ahead, flank, disrupt. They wear furs and short blades, hide in the underbrush, break enemy ranks before the first blow is struck. You want 3 of them in your unit. Any more, and they'll fight each other. Ship warriors. Not a class, more of a bond. The men you sail with, who row when the sea is cruel, and fight when the beach offers resistance. They know the balance of ship and sword. They board fast, strike first, and leave quicker than fire can spread. You trust your shipmates more than your kin, because you've seen what happens when a wave hits wrong or an ambush hides behind the tide. If a man can save your life in the surf, he's worth trusting in the fight. Foreign mercenaries, sometimes Saxons, sometimes Slavs, sometimes Arabs, hired swords who speak your tongue badly, but kill well enough to be paid. You don't trust them, but you need them. They bring strange weapons, new tactics, old grudges. They never stay long, but while they're with you, they fight hard. Like men with nothing to lose and something to prove. Veterans, old warriors, bent backs, missing fingers, eyes that never stop moving. They don't swing fastest, but they hit hardest. They don't talk much, but when they do, you listen, because they know where to stand, when to strike, how to live through the noise and the blood and the sound of your own heart breaking. You hope to become one, but the cost is high, and then there's you, whatever name they give you, whatever rank you wear. You wake, you fight, you bleed, you survive, not for glory, not for gold, but because it's what you do. You were raised with axe in hand. You were taught to face the storm. You were told that dying well is better than living long, and on the battlefield you don't question it. You move, you strike, you hold the line, or you break it. Either way, the saga will go on, and maybe, just maybe, they'll remember your name too, before the rivers pulled you east, before trade routes wove your name into new alphabets. You went west. And when you did, you didn't come to settle, not at first. You came with fire. The West was different, not soft. No, the Saxons could fight, but they were organized, structured, tied to their churches and kings and man-made maps. You didn't understand that yet. You just saw silver crosses, stone walls, and enough wealth to drown in. The first time you landed in England, you didn't even know it was called that. You just knew the ground felt softer than home. And the monks screamed like birds. Lindisfarne, 793. That's where it truly began, a holy island, unarmed, unready. You remember how the tide carried the longships in silently, how the fog made ghosts of your oars, how the first torch lit the first roof and the sky changed color. You took gold. You took books you couldn't read. You took lives, and when you sailed away, you left behind more than 5. You left fear. England would never forget. The raids multiplied. Monasteries first, then towns, then cities. You learned their coastlines like a fisherman learns his nets. When the tides shift, where the rivers split, how to disappear. But England didn't stay weak. By the time you returned with a real force, a coalition of jarls, warriors, berserkers, all sharpened by decades of ambition, they were ready, or at least they had begun to be. They called it the Great Heathen Army. You called it just the beginning. In 865, you landed not to plunder, but to conquer, to carve a kingdom from someone else's map. You weren't alone. Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan Ragnarsson, Ubbe, sons of Ragnar if you believe the stories. Brothers by blood, if not always by allegiance, you didn't care. They brought men, they brought rage, they brought strategy, and that was enough. You marched north to Northumbria, where civil war had already made kings into corpses. York fell fast. It always does. By the time the Saxons understood your intentions, you were already building walls, not ships, forts, burhs, homes. You pushed south. East Anglia welcomed you with tribute and trembling. A king named Edmund offered horses. You took the horses, then you took his head. The army moved west into Mercia, splitting it like a rotted log. By 873, three kingdoms were either conquered or in ruins. Only one remained. Wessex, the southern kingdom, the last holdout. You thought it would fall like the rest, but Wessex had Alfred. You remember him, not tall, not loud, but steady. He didn't scream, he survived. The first time you fought him, you expected collapse. You got trenches, spies, reinforcements from towns you hadn't reached yet. You burned his cities. He disappeared. You chased him through woods. He starved and watched. He waited. Then, in 878, he struck back. Battle of Edington. You remember it. The mud. The shield walls pressing like jaws. The sudden weight of realization, this man would not yield. You held your line until it cracked. And when it cracked, so did your plan. You fled. Others surrendered. But Alfred didn't wipe you out. He offered peace, land, borders. He offered the Danelaw, a compromise between conquest and containment. You took it, half of England, carved with axe and ink. And for a time, you ruled. You minted coins with your names. You married local women. You built towns on top of towns. You weren't just invaders anymore. You were kings. But peace in England is a shadow. It never stays long. After Alfred died, his son Edward and then Ethelstan rose to reunite what you had broken. Battle of Brunanburh, 937. The Great Reckoning. You fought with Scots, Norse Gaels, Dubliners. You stood against the House of Wessex with a coalition of kingdoms, and you lost. It was brutal, legendary. You don't remember the whole battle. Just flashes. The smell of blood thick in your throat. The sound of iron meeting bone. The sun blackened by smoke. You survived, but barely. England too survived. Under one king. Still, you remained. The Danelaw didn't vanish overnight. Its people didn't forget their gods, their oaths, their dead. Churches rose, yes, but so did longhouses. You taught the English your words, your farming, your poetry. They taught you law, patience, and how to write history in Latin. It wasn't always war. Sometimes it was marriage, land trades, baptism at sword point. You saw Norse jarls kneel in churches, speak Christ's name with pagan accents, and cross themselves wrong. You laughed, then did it too, just in case, but peace has enemies. In 1013, you returned in full force. Not small raiding bands, an army, a fleet, a claim to the throne, Sweyn Forkbeard. Then Canute the Great. You watched them break Wessex again, take the crown. For a brief, flickering moment, England was ruled from the north. And then, as always, time shifted. Bloodlines tangled, and you lost what you'd claimed. Still, the echoes remain. You walk through York and hear Norse in the cobblestones. You see it in the names Grimston, Thorpe, Kirkby. Your mark is on their tongue. You see it in their law, their roads and their ruins. England was never the same, because you didn't just burn it. You became part of it. The West gave you blood, bitter and sweet. You lost brothers there, buried friends with coins on their eyes and swords across their chests. You named sons after kings you once tried to kill. You wore crosses made of gold and kept Thor's hammer hidden beneath your shirt. And when the time came to sail east, toward the rivers, toward the unknown, you did not forget England. You carried its battles in your scars, its names in your memory, and its silver in your pouch, because the West made you sharp. And only then were you ready for the East. So now you've heard the stories of the West, of monks running, of silver taken, of the sea turned red. But the East is different. There are no abbeys there, no fat priests with jeweled goblets, no Latin prayers to echo through burning halls. The East offers something else, trade, opportunity, a slow conquest, not of flame, but of blood. You leave in spring, always spring, when the rivers swell and the longships rise like wolves out of winter. You sail from the fjords, cut across the Baltic, and aim for the mouths of rivers with names thick in the mouth. The Neva, the Dvina, the Volkhov. There are no tides here, only current. And the deeper you go inland, the thicker the world becomes. You move through green walls of pine, along waters that whisper in languages you don't yet understand. You are not the first. Others came before, some to raid, yes, but more to trade, to settle, to marry. And suddenly, your people have names in another tongue. Ruski, not Viking, not Norse, Ruski, the people of the oars. To the rivermen, you don't mind. Names don't matter, silver does. And in the east there is silver, in buckets, in towers, in strings wrapped around women's arms like chainmail made of coins. Dirhams, they're called, Arabic coins. That found their way up the Volga, from the Caliphate and across the steppes, carried by traders with long beards and longer roots. You don't care where the silver started, only where it ends, in your pouch, in your hall, melted into rings, buried with your dead. You stop at Staraya Ladoga, the gateway, a frontier post, half Norse, half Slavic, all opportunity. Here you trade amber for furs, weapons for honey, glass beads for stories. You don't speak the same language, but that doesn't stop the deals. A pointed finger, a raised brow, a nod, and a contract is born. Eventually, you go deeper. Downriver, southward, toward the Dnieper, you pass forests so thick they drink the light. Villages that offer bread and fear. And cities, real cities, not halls, not longhouses, walled towns with towers and onion-domed shrines, to saints you've never met, but whose eyes seem to follow you in every icon. And there are Slavs here, tall, rough, sharp-eyed, not weak, not soft. Their warriors carry curved blades. Their archers hunt like wolves. You respect them, you fight them, then you feast with them, and over time, you become them. Your brother marries a local girl. Your friend trades his Norse name for a Slavic one. You hear children speaking both tongues in the same sentence. You begin to dream in their language, not all the time, just enough to know. You are no longer only what you were. The Rus become more than raiders. They become rulers. They build fortresses, mint coins, issue laws. Some are still Norse, some only half. Some nothing of the North remains but a name, a burial mound, a rusted sword. But the bloodline continues. You hear of a man named Rurik, a chieftain who came with ships and stayed, who founded a line of kings, a dynasty. His sons and their sons spread across the land, to Novgorod, Kiev, and beyond. They fight Khazars to the south, forge treaties with the Byzantines, send warriors to Constantinople as bodyguards. The famous Varangian Guard, sworn to protect the emperor with axes and silence. You know men who've gone, they return with gold, and stories, and scars. You follow the Dnieper, to its final mouth at the Black Sea, to the city of cities, Miklagard. Constantinople, there is nothing like it. Marble, gold, spices so rich they burn your nose, and walls so high they insult the sky. You're not allowed inside, not at first, but you see enough. Enough to know the world is wider than you imagined, and yet they want you here. Not as a threat, as muscle. You sign your name in a foreign script, pledge yourself to a throne you'll never sit on, and in return you are fed, paid, clothed in silk, and remembered. But you never forget the rivers, the trade routes that carried you here, the way the water curves like a spine through the east, connecting all things. You map them in your mind. The Volga, flowing to the Caspian, the Dnieper to the Black Sea, the Don, winding like a whisper through the steppe. And along those rivers you've left pieces of yourself. Children, coins, oaths, scars. Back home, they still speak of raids, of Lindisfarne, of Paris, of Ireland. But here, in the East, the conquest was quieter, more complete. You didn't just take, you stayed, and the Slavs took from you too. They wear Thor's hammer beside the Christian cross. They name sons Igor and Oleg, Norse names softened by Slavic mouths. Their laws echo Norse customs. Their warriors wear fur and iron in your style. Even their kings claim your blood. And yet, something changes. Time dulls edges, forges new shapes. You build homes from logs, not planks. You bury your dead facing east, not north. You sing their songs, you keep their feasts, but you still remember, you still carve runes when no one's looking. Sometimes you return to the fjords. You step off the ship, and the mountains feel smaller than you remember. The air colder, your old friends older still. They ask you where you've been, what you've seen. You say little. There's too much to explain, too much they wouldn't believe. That once you sailed so far, your shadow stretched across a palace floor, where an emperor bowed to you and a market girl gave you a coin. That smelled like cinnamon and incense. You don't tell them about the woman in Novgorod, the one with dark hair and calloused hands, the one who knew how to gut a fish better than most men know how to speak. You don't tell them about your daughter, who learned to write before she learned to weave. You don't say that the East gave you more than silver, it gave you roots, because raids are only the beginning. The flash, the first note of a long saga. But the story, the real one, is what comes after. When you stay, when you change, when your name outlives your body, in a language you never meant to learn. And so the Rus are born, not fully Norse, not fully Slavic, something in between, something stronger, a new people for a new world. With longships, yes, but also cities, laws, dynasties, and you, some part of you, is part of that foundation. A raider, a trader, a settler, a shadow carved in riverstone. Their names still thunder through the halls, not whispered, roared, because Valhalla remembers. And the old ones, the ones who made the world tremble, are more than stories. They are pillars. You hear them before you meet them. Their names spoken like oaths, like prayers, like warnings. Ragnar Lodbrok. You hear his laughter first, rough, deep, defiant. He wears the past like armor, a crown of tales, half true, all earned. King, raider, seeker of gods. He sailed where others prayed. He bled for glory and burned in a snake pit, not with screams, but with prophecy on his lips. It gladdens me to know that Odin makes ready the benches, he said, as vipers coiled around his ribs. He died not begging, but singing, and when he entered the hall, he did not bow. Björn Ironside, Ragnar's son, a mountain of a man. His fists could fell trees. His axe was said to split not just shields, but the spirit of men. He sailed farther than the sun dared follow, to Francia, to the Mediterranean, to the lands where sand burns the feet, and cities rise like mountains. They said no blade could pierce him, that he was carved from the bones of giants. He came back with treasure, but more than that. With songs, they still call his name in battle, not to summon, to warn, Ivar the Boneless, another of Ragnar's sons. If Björn was strength, Ivar was mind, cursed at birth, his legs twisted and useless. But what he lacked in bone, he made up in will. His enemies feared him not for his sword, but for his strategy. He moved like a shadow, saw openings before they existed. He led the great heathen army. He broke kings. He crushed kingdoms beneath a silent stare. Some say he could not feel pain. Others say he was pain, walking, thinking, conquering. In the hall, he sits apart, not aloof, just watching. Lagertha, shield maiden, queen, thunder in woman's form. She fought not behind the lines, but through them. Her spear danced, her shield sang. She killed for honor. She ruled with fire. She left no man's shadow unbroken. They say her hair shone like snow under moonlight. That men would lower their blades, just to meet her eyes, and regret it the moment steel found their ribs. She bore Ragnar's children, then bore war for her own name. She walks the hall now, not behind any man, but beside the gods. Harald Hardrada, the last Viking, the storm at the edge of an era. He bled in exile, fought in foreign lands, rose from nothing to command empires. He served in the Byzantine Varangian Guard. His coin bore a foreign tongue, but his heart beat like the fjords. He returned home crowned with fire, King of Norway, breaker of armies. At Stamford Bridge, he fell, not as a man lost, but as a warning. His death marked the end of the age of Vikings, but not the end of their fire. Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, hero of legend whose name drips with myth. He slew Fafnir, the serpent who guarded cursed gold. He bathed in dragon's blood, could speak to birds, could hear fate whispering through the leaves. His sword, Gram, was forged by dwarves and fate alike. It split an anvil, then split history, but even he could not outwit the web of gods and treachery. Betrayed, murdered by his own kin, but not forgotten. He walks the halls still, gold ring on his finger, fire in his eyes. Starkadr, the cursed hero, wounded by fate, bound by duty. He lived 3 lifetimes, killed heroes, saved kingdoms, suffered endless pain, loved by Odin, hated by Thor. He was both villain and champion, both shadow and light. In battle, none stood longer. In death, none stood prouder. He bore the weight of destiny like a yoke, and never flinched. Now, he watches over the newest warriors, his silence heavier than most men's war cries. Freydis Eiriksdottir, daughter of Eric the Red, sister to Leif, the explorer, but she carved her own saga, not with maps, but with violence. On Vinland's distant shores, when warriors fled before a foreign storm, she stayed, pregnant, barefoot, alone. She took up a sword, bared her chest, and screamed her defiance into the enemy's eyes. They broke before she did. They say even the land remembered her scream. She walks Valhalla now, with no man's name in her shadow. Egil Skallagrimsson, poet, warrior, monster, man. His words cut as deep as his axe. He sang of blood with the same tongue that praised spring. He killed without flinching. He mourned like the world had ended. He wrote elegies for his own son, then tore his enemies limb from limb. Cursed with a berserker's rage, blessed with a skald's soul. In the hall, his verses echo louder than the war horn. Leif Erikson, explorer, pathfinder, dreamer. He sailed west when maps whispered edge, found land no other eye had seen. He was not a warlord, not a raider, but a builder. He brought his people to new earth, lit fire on foreign shore, and showed that the Viking soul was not only destruction, but discovery. In the hall, he walks with salt still in his beard, and the horizon in his eyes. These are the legends, the war-born, the tale-woven. They died 100 different ways. By blade, by treachery, by storm and time. But they live here, now, forever. Each one a story, each one a lesson. Their names are not just remembered, they are summoned. When a warrior lifts their blade, when a skald begins a verse, when a child dreams of standing tall, before fear and death, these names rise, not as ghosts, but as gods of will. They are not just heroes, they are the shape of what it means to matter, to live, to fight, to burn, and their stories are what built this hall, what fuel its fires, what call the next brave soul home. You feel it before it arrives, not in the air, not in the ground, in your marrow, in the space behind your eyes. The cold dash, not the kind that stings the skin, but the kind that drifts beneath it like fog, seeping into your bones, whispering that something old and final has come. Your shield is splintered, half hanging from your arm. Your axe is gone, snatched from your grip in a moment you can't remember, lost to the mud or to someone else's glory. Around you the sounds of war are thinning, the cries of rage, of agony, of the beat of iron on iron, fade into a hush so total it feels sacred. The battle is not over, it is simply ending. Not in victory, not in defeat, just ending. You are on your knees, mud clings to your hands like wet ash. There is blood in your mouth, sharp, metallic, thick, yours, someone else's. You're not sure anymore. The sky above you churns like boiling water. And then, black wings, dozens, hundreds, ravens. Too many for mere scavengers. These are watchers, harbingers. You smile, because you know what they mean, what they bring. You fall, but not backwards, not to the side, Straight down, not onto the earth, through it. You fall through mist, silver and slow, clinging to your skin like memory, through time, where moments stretch and fold like breath held too long. Through memory dash, flashes of faces, voices, battles past and undone. Your body, the vessel that bled and broke, stays behind. But your name? Your name is lighter than flesh, and it moves on. The first thing you see is the bridge. It stretches out before you, not rainbowed like Bifrost. Not yet. This one is grey stone and silence, the bridge between breath and nothing. It hums under your feet. It knows your weight. You walk it alone. There is no rush. Time bends here. Your wounds don't ache. Your limbs remember how to move, even if your mind hasn't caught up. And ahead, a shape, a hall. Not just a hall. The hall. Valhalla. It rises like a mountain forged from myth. The roof is golden, shimmering with light that has no source. The walls, a mosaic of spear shafts, each one claimed from a fallen warrior. Shields line the ceiling like constellations, telling the stories of those who sit beneath them. It is not silent. It is a storm held within walls, a roar of life after death. Laughter echoes, steel rings as it clashes in friendly challenge. The mead horns crack against oak tables in celebration and remembrance. You step forward. The gates part like they've been waiting for you. When there, Odin, not radiant, not terrifying, just present. He wears a cloak of ash grey, a single eye burning like frostlit coals. You expect words, a greeting, a decree, but he only nods, and that is enough. The other warriors rise as one. Their fists hammer the tables. They call your name, the one you bore in life, now sharper in their mouths, a blade tempered by death. They do not ask how you died. They already know. You have earned this. Now you are one of them. Valhalla is not paradise. It is not peace. It is the place for those who never wanted either. By day, you train. You spar under skies that never cloud, on a field that heals by sundown. You fight the greatest warriors ever born, Sigurd with his cursed blade, Starkadr, heavy with fate, Ragnar, grinning like a wolf. Some you know, some only your fear remembers. Each morning begins with the war horn. Its call is not a demand, it's a promise. You eat, flesh still warm from the fire. You arm yourself, steel whispering against leather, and you march out into the endless field. There you fight, to the death, and then you rise. No scars, no shame, you do it again. By night, you feast. The hall stretches wider than any kingdom you knew. The benches are carved with runes and claw marks. The fire in the hearth never dies, fueled by something older than wood. Mead flows from Heidrun, the she-goat of the gods. Her milk a river of honey-thick joy. Meat is carved from Seorimnir, the great boar who dies each day, and rises again by dawn, still sizzling. You eat until you are full. Then you drink until the mead remembers for you. Then you sing. Songs from your village, from your crew, and new ones born of this hall. You do not age. You do not weaken. This is eternity, and it tastes like smoke and salt and stories too long for mortal breath. You tell your tale, not for pride, but for place. Every seat in Valhalla is earned in blood and story, and every god listens. Odin leans close. Bragi, god of the Skalds, nods with every pause. The Valkyries, those who chose you, refill your horn without needing to be asked. Your saga becomes part of the hall, not inked, spoken, and when another warrior speaks it, your name strikes harder than any blade you carried. The Valkyries roam the hall, not servants, judges, witnesses. They do not speak often, but their eyes speak enough. They know how you fought, how you stood, how you fell, and in their gaze you are measured and found worthy again. But not all warriors come here. Some go to Folkvanga, Freya's hall, where valor is met with gentler song. Others fall to hell, or to the sea, or to silence. The fate of those who died unnamed, unremembered. But you? You are here, because you met death with a roar, not a whimper, because your final act was to raise a weapon, not a plea. The gods speak in fragments. Thor laughs, his hammer resting beside a plate piled with roasted marrow. Tyr maps the day's battles with calm precision, always thinking of the war to come, and Odin, he watches, always watching. One night, you ask, just once, why this all matters? Why train? Why fight? Why feast and wake and do it again? The answer is simple. Ragnarok, the end of all things, the wolf's jaws, the fires rise, the sky torn open by fate. One day the horn will sound, Gjallarhorn. Heimdall will blow it with lungs carved from thunder, and every warrior in this hall will rise for one final march. Not for glory, not for gold, but for all that was, all that should be. Until that day, you train, you fight, you feast, you sharpen yourself, you become something more, because death was not the end, it was the door, and what lies beyond it is not rest. It is purpose. When you sit beside Odin, horn in hand, flame reflecting in your eyes, the fiercest souls at your side, you smile, because this is not heaven, this is not peace, this is honor, earned, endless, unbreakable, and it is everything they promised, and doesn't shatter, but bends it. Her name was Estrid. She wasn't raised to hold a sword. She was meant to tend the fire, mend sails, and bear sons. But Estrid learned early that the hearth could burn just as bright in her hands as in any forge. She didn't ask permission to fight. She just showed up, axe in hand, teeth gritted, and dared the gods to say something. The sagas barely mention her. A line here, a name there. Estrid of the Ice Walk. A ghost of a title, more chill than substance. Some say she rode into battle beside her brother and never came back. Others whisper she led a doomed voyage west, chasing a dream of land and legend. And a few say she survived, that she took off her helm, dropped her axe, and disappeared into the quiet. A mother, a farmer, a storm pretending to be still. But no matter how it ended, this much is certain. Estrid did what no one expected. She didn't just fight, she commanded, not through bloodlines or birthright, but through presence, the kind that silences a longhouse, and makes war chiefs sit straighter when she walks past. She didn't seek glory, she sought survival, and when survival meant leading, she did it better than the men who had practiced their whole lives. You won't find her on a rune stone, no carved serpent bears her story, but you'll hear her name at the edge of the fire, when the wind howls too loud, and the mead runs too thin. When someone whispers, "Tell us about Estrid," and the room leans in like it remembers. Because they do remember. Not in detail. Not dates, not battles. They remember how she made them feel. Safe, seen, strong. She never wore a circlet. She wore wolfskin and sea salt and a scar on her chin. From the time she stood between a raider and a crying child, Estrid didn't follow rules. She followed storms. And when she stood ankle-deep in mud, defending a half-burned village with a cracked shield and nothing left to prove, her people followed her into the fire anyway. Because that's what leadership looked like. Not polished, not perfect, but present. She didn't lead from a high seat. She led from the shield wall, and the vow she made, never to sleep under a roof until her people were safe, wasn't poetic. It was brutal, rain-soaked, bone-deep. But they watched her keep it, night after night, while their sons healed and their daughters stopped crying. Centuries later, Estrid's name barely clings to the margins of memory. She isn't quoted in laws, she isn't blessed in temples, but in every cold breath before battle, in every village that buries its dead and still rebuilds. She's there, not famous, not crowned, but true. She taught the North something the gods never did, that the strongest oath is one made without witnesses, kept not for praise but for purpose. And though her bones have long turned to frost, the ground hasn't forgotten. It still holds her footprints, buried beneath layers of ash and snow, quietly insisting you don't need songs to be remembered. You just need to stand. It was a world of ritual, rhythm, and reverence. where every stone had a spirit, and every shadow might be watching. Long before the sagas were written down, the Norse lived by cycles, not just the turning of seasons, but the movement of stars, the growl of the ocean, and the will of the gods. Tradition wasn't optional, it was breath, it was bone. You didn't question it any more than you questioned the sky being cold or the sea being cruel. In Viking life, the sacred and the practical were never far apart. To carve a runestone, to butcher a pig, to build a ship. All of it could be ritual, all of it mattered. The year itself was carved by ceremony. Blots, sacrifices, marked every hinge in the calendar. There were blots for planting, blots for harvest, blots to ward off disease, blots to ensure your cow didn't drop dead in the snow. Some were small, a cup of ale spilled on the ground, a quiet word at a tree. Others were grand, fires, songs, animal blood soaking the earth. While the community stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes wide with meaning. The gods didn't live in distant heavens. They were close, wound into the land, the weather, your luck. Odin demanded wisdom and pain. Thor wanted strength and loyalty. Frey blessed the soil. Freya guarded the home. And Loki, well, Loki reminded you not to take anything for granted. But even deeper than the gods were the Landvetir, the land spirits. You didn't cut down a tree without leaving an offering. You didn't build a new hall without whispering to the dirt first, because if you angered the spirits, no roof would hold, no crop would grow, and your dreams would twist into warnings. Burial was belief in action. Death wasn't the end. It was relocation. A warrior might be laid in his ship, surrounded by weapons, goods, and sometimes a horse. A farmer might get his best tools, a woman her brooches and keys. Because the next world was not a vapor, it was a place, and you went there prepared. There were different afterlives for different fates. Valhalla was for those who died in battle. Folkvangr, Freya's hall, welcomed others with honor. And Hel, ruled by the goddess of the same name, was not hell. It was cold, quiet, and somber. A waiting room for the forgotten. Names mattered. You didn't name a child lightly. Many bore the names of ancestors, not to honor the past, but to revive it. To be named after your grandfather wasn't symbolic. It was spiritual insurance. It was continuity, protection, and sometimes eerie resemblance. The dead were never truly gone. They lingered in memory, in dreams, and sometimes, according to the wise women, in the barn rafters. Speaking of wise women, the Volur. They weren't just seers, they were bridges. Between the living and the dead, between fate and choice. A Volva could see the strands of your life before you could crawl. She carried a staff, wore cloaks stitched with bones, and when she spoke, the wind listened. Villages sought her counsel before raids, before births, before burying someone who refused to stay buried. Her visions were sung, not said. And once a prophecy was spoken, you couldn't escape it. Only prepare. Magic in the Viking world wasn't fireballs or theatrics. It was seder, subtle, dangerous, and woven from thread and breath. Mostly practiced by women, though some men dared as well. At great cost to their reputation. Because cider bent the will of the world, and bending things in a world of straight lines and hard rules was suspicious. Still, it was done. To heal, to curse, to call the wind, to find what was lost, or make someone else lose it. Even the household was ritual. The hearth was sacred. The flame never left untended, never extinguished without prayer. Ashes were stirred in silence. Bread was baked not just to feed, but to protect. Children were taught not just chores, but songs. Not just names, but runes, scratched on wood, inked on bone, carried like armor. To be Norse wasn't to follow a religion. It was to live in a story too old to remember, and too powerful to ignore. The gods didn't ask for faith, they asked for participation. You gave, you built, you bled, you sang, and in return, you lived with meaning. These traditions weren't superstition. They were survival wrapped in story, memory worn smooth by centuries of hands. You didn't ask why, you just stood in the snow, raised your cup, and whispered the name of a god whose face you'd never seen, but somehow knew, because in Viking life, ritual wasn't extra, it was everything. The days do not end here. They fold like waves on the shore of something greater, and though you fight, feast, rise, and do it again, you begin to notice something else, stories, not just yours. They move like wind in the hall, passing from mouth to mouth, changing slightly, gaining weight. The old tales are told with reverence, of the first battles, of the ships that kissed strange shores, of gods who bled, and men who dared speak their names. And in between, new names are spoken. Your name, the names of those who fell beside you, they live here now, not just on tongues, but in the very bones of the hall. This is what you fought for, even if you did not know it at the time, to be remembered, to echo, because the Viking does not fear death. He fears oblivion. No stone over your grave lasts forever, no rune carved in wood escapes rot, but a name carried in stories, that is a fire no storm can drown. You hear them talk of you sometimes, the way you stood, the way your axe moved, the look in your eyes before the final blow. You recognize yourself, but you also don't. You are becoming a myth, even to the myth makers, and this too is a kind of afterlife, because for your people, legacy was more than gold left behind, or sons born of your blood. Legacy was the trail you left through the world, the wake behind your longship, the scream of your name in a shield wall, the breathless moment before a song reaches your part of the verse. In life they sang of those who came before, in death they sing of you, and in time they will sing of those yet to come, because the Viking did not dream of peace. He dreamed of firelight, of voices raised in unison, of being told. To them, the future was not some soft place waiting to be tamed. It was a field dash, unfought, unclaimed, burning with potential. The world was always ending, always beginning, and they meant to carve their names into both ends. Children were taught to listen not just with ears, but with bones, to feel the truth in a tale, to taste the blood behind the boast. Fathers told sons of their forebears, not as lessons, but as warnings. The gods made the world from the bones of a giant, and so must you build something from the bones of the past. They spoke of the future in riddles, not because they feared it, but because they respected it. No one escapes their fate. Even the gods die at Ragnarök. But what you do with your name before that day, that is yours to command. And so they lived like sparks struck from flint, brief, bright, defiant, not hoping to last forever, but to matter in the time they had, to shout loud enough that eternity would remember the echo. Even in Valhalla you feel it, a thread that ties every warrior, every god, every ghost. Not just memory, continuance. You begin to understand. This hall, this cycle, it is not for indulgence, it is not reward, it is preparation, it is preservation, because the stories must be kept, they must be told, they must grow teeth and walk on their own. And you are a part of them now, a verse in a longer song, a line in a saga that never ends. The skalds come each night, their voices rough with mead, their hands calloused from harp strings and hilt grips alike. They sing of Jörmungandr and Thor, of Loki's lies and Freya's tears, but they also sing of Ketil the Red, who held a bridge alone, of Brynja, shield maiden of storm, who cut down 30 men to buy her kin a breath longer, and sometimes they sing of you, the way your blade moved like it had already seen the fight, the way you stood even as your blood painted the snow, the way you laughed in the face of the thing that killed you. Your story is not locked in the moment you fell, it is alive, it changes, it grows. Someday, far from this hall, a child will hear your name beside a fire. Their eyes will widen, their pulse will quicken, they will not know your face, but they will know your deed, and that is enough. In this way, the Viking lives on, not as a shadow, but as a presence. The future they imagined was not built on ease. It was built on daring, on crossing waters not yet charted, on reaching for stars not yet named. They knew the world would forget their houses, their tools, their fields, but they dared it to forget their stories. Even the gods know this. Odin's greatest treasures are not gold or weapon, they are names. He drinks memory like wine. He stores story like grain for winter. And when the final battle comes, he will call them forth. Every name worth speaking, every deed worth dying for. Your people built ships with bones of trees and sails like storm clouds. They rode the oceans back, not for conquest, but for proof. Proof that they existed, that they dared, that they mattered. You were born from that same fire. You burned in life. You burn still. The future is not some place they fled to. It was something they challenged, dared to meet head on. They saw time like a wave, not to ride gently, but to split with the prow of your will. And now you sit here, in a hall built from the courage of generations, watching the sagas pass between lips like sacred rites. You are not waiting, you are witnessing. This is what immortality means. Not a heartbeat that never stops, but a name that never dies. Each time your story is told, you rise again, not in flesh, but in fire, and somewhere out there, a soul picks up a weapon they do not yet know they'll wield. They feel the pull of something older than blood, something waiting, calling. You smile, because you know, the hall will open for them too one day. If they're brave, if they're bold, if they meet death the way you did. With a grin and a blade, the gods listen, the skalds sing, the Valkyries ride, and your story, your legacy walks on, not behind you, ahead, always ahead. You hear the town before you see it. First, the clang of iron, then the dogs, then the shouting, sharp, clipped words in a dozen dialects. The smell hits last. Smoke, pitch, salt, and sweat, baked into the timbers of 1,000 lives pressed shoulder to shoulder. This is no village. This is a Kaupstad, a market town, and it's alive. You walk in with your cloak tight, your eyes sharp, and not because you're afraid, because you're about to step into the bones of the north itself. This place, half port, half fortress, is not built for beauty. It's built for function, for trade, for work, for survival. You pass under a wooden arch, carved with runes faded from time and greasy from hands. No gates, just the understanding that everyone here is armed, and no one here is stupid. The town isn't walled, yet, but ditches circle the outskirts deep and dry. Watchmen walk the edges, axes at their hips and eyes narrowed to slits. Inside, the streets aren't streets, they're paths, some stone, mostly mud, all busy. You step into the noise. To your left, the sound of hammer on anvil. The blacksmith's longhouse is open to the wind, sparks dancing like fireflies around his forge. He doesn't look up. He's folding iron, again. His apprentice pumps the bellows with one foot and curses in rhythm. Blades, nails, horseshoes, hinges, rivets. If it bends or breaks, it comes here. Tools line the wall like a shrine to labor. Some weapons too. Nothing fancy, just right. Blacksmiths don't talk much. Their work does. Next door, the tanner. You smell it first. Piss, lime, blood. The stench curls your nose, but it means progress. Animal skins hang from beams like drying flags. He scrapes hair off one hide with a bone-bladed knife, muttering to himself. The apprentice stirs a pit of bark slurry with a stick as tall as he is. It's ugly work, and vital. Leather means boots, straps, armor, belts, bindings. If the blacksmith gives things shape, the tanner gives them skin. Across the muddy path, the potter's kiln glows like a second sun. She's shaping clay with hands like stone, bowls, flasks, lamps. Her wheel spins with hypnotic speed, and when you speak, she doesn't stop. She just answers, short, sure, and covered in red dust. You can tell a town's age by its pottery. Old towns have mismatched shards. This one is new. Everything matches. Everything's still learning. There's a row of stalls past the well, covered in cloth, packed with smells. Fish, salted, smoked, fresh, and fermenting. A man with seaweed in his beard yells prices you don't understand, even though he's speaking your tongue. Next to him, a stall selling onions, turnips, leeks, dried apples in knotted cloth bags. The woman running it wears 2 knives and no shoes. She's missing a thumb. You don't ask. A man sells honeyed bread. The smell is enough to stop your feet. The loaves are dark and heavy. He cuts one with a string and offers a slice the size of a coin. You take it. It's better than anything you've eaten all week. You buy two. The weaver's hall is just beyond the main road, wide and low like a beast at rest. Inside, looms, dozens, vertical, horizontal, some older than the women using them. Wool hangs in every color the land can offer, dyed with nettles, berries, iron. A woman threads the shuttle with the ease of breath. The beat of loom against wood is its own language. They're weaving tunics, blankets, rope, armor padding. You don't speak. You don't need to. They've already forgotten you're there. You hear chanting. The skald is standing on a barrel, surrounded by children and drunks. He's telling a saga about a hero who killed a bear with his bare hands and then married it. You've heard this one. It gets better each time. He pauses, eyes scanning for coin. A few are thrown at him. He bows, grinning, and begins again. Story as currency here. Not just entertainment. Memory. Farther down, a row of long, low buildings with smoke holes and bolted doors. The brewers, you stop here. Everyone does. Not to drink, yet. But to respect the process. Barley, yeast, patience. Barrels line the wall, marked in chalk. Mead, ale, something stronger. The brewer waves without looking. He knows you, or someone like you. Behind the hall, goats, always goats, and the pile of spent grain steaming in the cold. You find the boat builder's yard by following the sound of saws. It's near the water, of course. Every Viking town hugs a river or a bay like a lifeline. Longships sit half-formed on log rails, their ribs rising like skeletons. One is nearly done. Tar glistening on its flanks, runes carved at the bow, a face painted beneath the prow like a god waiting to be born. Men are arguing over the shape of the keel. Another man is sharpening an adze with a stone, singing a funeral song under his breath. You walk past the shavings, breathing deep. Wood, salt, oil, and pride. On the docks, chaos, always. Carts, crates, fish, furs, men lifting, shouting, dropping, laughing. A woman swears in 3 languages as she counts coins with one hand and slaps a thief with the other. Boats come and go, traders from Ireland, Frisia, the Baltics, some with silk, some with bones, all with eyes like maps. The trader's lodge stands tall, 2 stories. Stone foundation. Inside, the air is thick with sweat and spice. You see furs from the north, tin from Cornwall, beads from the east, glass from Miklagard. A man is arguing over the price of an amber necklace. A slave is kneeling in the corner, too still to be unseen. Trade is not clean, but it is honest. There is a hall where disputes are settled, the thingstead, a raised mound, a carved post, a man with a staff and a voice like cold iron. Here, debts are spoken aloud. Oaths are made. Justice is performed, not just declared. You've seen a man fined for theft, another exiled. Once, you saw a duel. The crowd does not cheer. They witness. This is law in the north, not paper, memory. Near the center of town, a temple. Small, wooden, sacred. Inside, idols of Thor, Odin, Freya. Offerings of meat, bread, beads. A Godi chants in low tones. A bowl of blood from a goat sacrifice still warm at the altar. This is not Sunday. This is survival made spiritual. You bow, not out of habit, out of instinct. The healer's hut is tucked near the woods. Of course it is. Medicine and magic don't like to be watched. You smell sage, mead, burnt feathers. Inside, racks of dried herbs, jars of things with too many legs, a bed, a fire, a table covered in blood. Someone's being stitched. Someone else is already dead. The healer doesn't look up. She's busy. Death waits for no one. You pass the coopery, barrels being made, bound with iron hoops. The carver's shed, a boy chiseling a horse from bone. The charcoal pit, low fires under turf, tended night and day. You pass children kicking a stuffed bladder, a man training with 2 swords. a woman dragging a deer carcass by its antlers. You pass life, real life, loud, ugly, beautiful. At the edge of town, the graveyard. Small mounds, stone circles, some marked, most not. You see a boat burial, still fresh. They burned it clean as they should. Ash mixed with frost, smoke rising to the gods. You stop, you bow your head, then walk on. The sun begins to fall, painting every roof in gold. Smoke rises from hearths, the smell of stew thickens. Someone starts a song near the brewer's hall. You recognize the tune. Tomorrow the market will buzz again. Tomorrow the forge will burn again. Tomorrow the town will survive again. But for now, you sit, you eat, you drink, you laugh. And in that moment, you are part of something bigger than war or weather. You are part of a town, a living thing, built not on stone or faith, but on effort. And effort here is holy.